Hi, y'all. Happy Wednesday. How is everyone doing? Let me just make sure I can pull this up in the group. I'm hoping this one will be a good conversation for you, validating, I don't know, informative, behind the scenes looking, but I want to have a conversation if you have questions around this always. But in particular, I feel like sometimes these are the ones I want to take you behind the scenes as much as possible and be available for this question. So let me make sure that I can pull this up. Okay, there we go. I can see myself and I can see your questions, and we are live. All the exciting things, the technology is working. We are winning over here. It's not April Fool's anymore, so we don't have to worry about that. It is gorgeous outside here in New York City, though it's that weird, y'all, and everybody lives in different places, but it's that weird thing where it's like hot, cold, hot, cold. So I'll probably be taking my jacket on and off all throughout our call. But let us dive in to the conversation. Oh, before I jump in, I did have a cancellation in May for a session that we had booked. Someone had some personal things come up, so I had a spot booked kind of in advance, and we had that open up for the 6-month partnership. So for any of you who were maybe thinking about that, I do have an official spot that is opening up. So I'll drop a consultation link for that, and then I am opening up a strategy intensive this month for anybody who might want that. So I'll make sure that that link is in the bio and in the vault in the show notes for you. Okay, so let's talk celebrations. But I think this is maybe this conversation will surprise you a little bit. So I'm celebrating my biggest cash month in 9 years of business. And I want to give a lot of context and preface here. I'm actually not usually one who celebrates pop big months so much. Not because I don't think they're a big deal, but I personally, my philosophy in business, what I care so much more about is the stability, the consistency. I'm, in many ways, my life is more personally affected by the fact that I did the math to double check to make sure I was in integrity here, but I've had 69 consecutive 10K to 40K, well, now a little bit more than 40K cash months. And for the last, I think it's the last three years, maybe 3.5 years, they've been 25K to 40K cash months. So that consistency honestly affects me, my life so much more. I think it's only in the online space we talk about these kind of like pop months so much. And I think, I talk about this with clients all the time, I think it's really important to celebrate the wins, to celebrate those milestones. And this one in particular for me is a really big milestone, which is why I want to break it down. Now, I think what's really interesting, so up until now, I've had plenty of 30K cash months, 35, 37, 38, 39, 40K cash months, but I have never passed the 40K month mark. Now, from a financial perspective, like it's always nice to make more money, but at this stage of my business, especially because I have a one-on-one model and we're so incredibly profitable, making a little bit more money is nice. I'm never discounting that. We're always available for it, and I'm available to scale and make more, but it doesn't really change the quality of my life or my day-to-day that much. I mean, I pay myself exactly the same amount. I just put a little bit more into stocks or into our business savings account or into something like that. However, what I really started to notice, so I think my first 40K cash month, I think it was 3 years ago. That I didn't check the math on, but about that, just to give context here. And I haven't crossed it since. So if nothing else, I just want everybody to see how long you can hold a goal for. Because what I started to notice is, and I think this happens for almost all of us, and I talk about this with clients so much, I think you all understand the concept of upper limits, but I think for all of us with money in particular, there's an amount all of us can make up to where it feels fine to make and it feels fine to receive. And I've seen this for all of my clients, and the amount is different for everyone, but there is a certain amount that to make more than that starts to hit our upper limit and starts to feel bad for different reasons. For some of my clients, it's because it feels overwhelming. For some, I've talked about this in different ways, but I have a very different take on it today, so hang with me. For some of my clients, it's because they don't feel worthy enough to make more than that. For some of my clients, they're like me, it doesn't feel like, it literally doesn't feel safe in their nervous system to make more. For some people, it feels like it'll come with more responsibility or more taxes, but there is a certain amount that making more of that kind of hits that upper limit and threshold. For me, that was 40K cash months. I put this in the email. I think I sent on Friday to the list. But in general, making up to that, for whatever reason, that amount felt fine to me. But making literally a penny more kicked up so much fucking shit for me. It was really fascinating to see. And so for the last 3 years, I've been working on that shit. And so this month, or last month, I had my biggest cash month ever. Now, I want you to understand this. It was bigger by $1,134. I had a $41,134K cash month. which is a big win. But if we look at that difference there, I think for many people, they'd be like, Kim, that's $1,134 more. Like, that's not even that big of a deal. And I kid you not. I mean, I wish, I probably should have pulled up my conversation with my coach in Basecamp. I care about the money, but I care so much less about the money and so much more about what that represents that we're going to talk about here. Because to me, that represents breaking an upper limit and so much internal work that I have had to shift. And I am so fucking proud of myself. And I feel like it's important to actually reflect this and mirror this because, again, I think sometimes we only hear people talk about like the quantum leaps that are like whatever that is. And I think we forget that quantum leaps and big shifts in our life, what's the analogy? It takes the most fuel for a rocket at liftoff than it does to kind of coast. I see this with my clients at every stage of business. It takes the most internal work and external work to make that first $1,000. The next 1,000 after that is easy. It takes the most internal work and external work to make your first 10K month. The next one after that is relatively easy, right? And so on for every milestone. The first 40K cash a month I did celebrate because it was a really big deal. I've been making not a quadrillion, but I've made so many cents. It's not that I don't respect it, but getting to that first hurdle is where the most has to shift. And then so especially when we're hitting our own internal upper limits or our own external upper limits, I think there's a lot of factors that go into this. I think we often won't hold on to a goal and a vision long enough to do the work required to have enough fuel and gas to move through that. But I think we often discount them when we have what seems like a small win. I don't know, this is big and small depending on how you look at it. But I almost catch myself wanting to minimize this. But I know that it takes the most rocket fuel liftoff, right? To go, if I've been hitting that upper limit for 3 fucking years, to me, this represents so much internal work. And that's really the celebration here. And that's what I want to talk about a lot more today. I'll share some of the practical external things that are strategy things that went into this. But y'all know, I love me and my strategy. I love our sales funnels. I love our messaging. I love our marketing. I love talking about all of that. It is absolutely important in business. Your business model matters. All of that matters. So we'll talk about that. But I think we just forget how much the internal part of it matters and how much what we subconsciously have a thermostat around really does determine so much of what we will allow in or out. I know I've talked about this in different ways before, but our brain loves congruence so much, and I think we don't always understand what that means. But what that means is if internally what is congruent for us is to make up to a certain amount, and that is what is either safe or acceptable or what allows us to fit in or whatever the thing is for you. We've all got our different stuff. We will do everything in our conscious power to have what we subconsciously believe is okay, safe, congruent. And so it is such a big shift then to create something that is non-congruent with what we believe there, because we have to shift basically the subconscious to have the external match. Hopefully that's all making sense there. But that congruency is, I just see it so often through all of my clients that I've been supporting for 9+ years, and how important that is for the results we create. Again, of course the strategy side matters, but even in strategy, and I'll give some examples, I just find it fascinating how what we believe, think, what feels safe, not safe, good, not safe, how much that then shows up in the way we're showing up congruently or not congruently in our strategy to have that match. And so I just want to have a really transparent conversation around this. If I'm now, see y'all, this is like the hot cold thing. I think this also happens when I'm live. I think I start sweating a little bit. TMI, but we're just gonna keep it real here. So let me know if you have questions around this. I did make notes, but I've already gone off into 14 tangents. So let's see if I can see if there are anything from my notes that I haven't covered, and then I will share some of the pieces I really wanted to. This was the other piece I wanted to share. With this kind of breaking through that threshold, I think what is helpful to understand is I had a lot around crossing that amount. And so I think, let me rewind the tape here. I think what's important to say, for any amount of money any of you want to scale to, there is a practical component. And so I just want to make sure, since this is more of a who I was being is what I'm celebrating essentially conversation, I don't want to discount the practical side of it. And so that's what I was saying, the biz model you have matters. I have a revenue sharing one-on-one business model. in some degrees, my revenue is capped in terms of the number of clients I can work with, and in many ways, it's not that it's capped. It's limitless with revenue share, but it is really out of my control. So I think that's important to understand, right? It's up to my clients and how much money my clients are making, essentially. And it is also like I do also impact and influence all of that. And what I really saw with the internal aspect for me is because I had so much shit around, and I'll share a little bit more about what my stuff is if that's helpful to hear, but around making more than this, it was just fascinating for me to see over and over again how much I was pushing away money, how much I created a story that the only way, especially with one-on-one and revenue share, would be like I'd have to work harder and harder or push more and more, or I'd have to like burn myself out, or that it wasn't possible or that it couldn't work for me. I see how often when there's this internal, like when we're hitting that internal threshold, or for us, I see this in clients quite a bit, how they won't show up to sell, or they'll diminish their work, or they'll discount their work, or they'll allow for clients to not pay their invoices on time, or they'll have drama show up that they won't solve for because it will basically be congruent to what they believe to be true. And what I mean by that in terms of drama, again, clients not paying bills, clients causing issues, not selling, having payments default, not making the sales they want. But because that is congruent to what they believe and like that threshold that they don't want to go past, they will allow for that subconsciously. None of us are consciously allowing for any of this. And I think this is why this becomes so important. So of course, we have to have the container. If you don't have the container to make a certain amount of money, it's tough to scale your business, right? We need the practical to support the other side, but you can have the container and all the practical pieces in the world. And if there's a part of you, it's the Carolyn Elliott quote I love so much, you don't get what you say you want, you get what you actually want. If a part of you doesn't actually want what you say you want, you will fight for the congruence of what you actually want. So if a part of me doesn't actually want to make more than 40K per month because I think if I do, that's the amount that'll actually make people hate me. That's the amount where people will say I don't deserve it. That's the amount where people won't want to pay revenue share anymore. That's the amount where I'll make people really uncomfortable, or people will really hate me for talking about how much money I make. I mean, I've got a lot of stuff around that. That's the amount where people in my life will expect me to pay for everything, and I'll have to overcompensate and take care of things. That's the amount where team will take advantage of me. That's right. If I have all of that stuff, then it doesn't matter how much I say I want to make more than that. Subconsciously, I'm always going to get what I actually want. What I actually want is, don't you dare make more money than that, because that represents a lot of stuff that feels really unsafe to my nervous system, that feels really, to my particular traumas, upbringing, like mindset, all the things, right? Like that feels particularly bad and unsafe. So until I can work through some of that stuff, I am going to subconsciously do everything I can to make sure I come up to that ceiling but never pass it. And so, and again, I think it's just, I find myself to be such an interesting case study because I love witnessing myself. And I understand I'm talking about a large sum of money and it seems like, oh my gosh, your upper limit's 40K, but also I just believe in continuing to stretch and grow. And I would like to make 100K per month, not because I need it, but because I would like to show myself that I can, like, I'm capable of that, and I can make that happen with one-on-one, and I can be a model for that. It's also just nice to make more money, but also more to like continue to stretch myself with what's possible. But also, I just find so much of our business and our money, especially when we're scaling, is also just such a representation of the inner work and growth, the opportunities we have. And so that's particularly what I'm celebrating, because what I see through all of this is what I see for myself and what I see for clients is so often our current results are, representation of like that current month, but they're really a representation of what we've been doing the last 90 days, often the last 6 months, sometimes the past year. And so I feel like I can track this back to some of the work I've been doing, I mean, honestly, for 3 years, but really in it for the last year. And I had some big shifts before the new year, kind of around the October, November time, and some really big shifts at the beginning of the year. And I've just been really leaning into some of the uncomfortable work for myself in big ways. And so it's just really fun for me to see that mirror. And so then again, it's only $1,134 more, but I feel like that is like almost as big as the first $1,134 I made in my business, because in many ways I feel like I'm a completely different person in operating my business. And that to me is a win to celebrate. And I want to reflect that to all of you, because I want all of you to see, like, that's the work and journey for all of us. Business is such a personal growth journey in the best way possible, but that's also the stuff to celebrate. I mean, of course, for my clients, I want them to make all the money in the world, and I'm so proud of them and celebrate them when they do. But if I'm really honest as a coach, the stuff I'm super, super proud of them in is all the internal work and all the ways they show up for the uncomfortable stuff and the hard stuff, and to shift through that and to do like the capital THEWORK work. Like that's the stuff that I just give myself so much my credit myself, but my clients so much credit for as well, that I just see really goes into those big wins, those big moments. And again, I think it's just so much easier for us to attribute it to the external, but everybody could do the same external and everybody's not getting the same results. Like this is the stuff that makes the difference, and this is the stuff so many of you I know, because my clients don't give themselves enough credit, and this is the stuff I will lovingly, I don't know if it's called giving them a hard time, like this is such a big deal, and I like want to harp on what a big deal it is, and why it's so important as well. So okay, let's see. I wanted to give you some specifics around this, and so it's not just like, oh, I'm being different and this represents that to me, but here are some interesting things I noticed in terms of what contributed to this, what didn't. So okay, I said I've had this goal for a really long time. I actually want to speak to that a little bit longer, because I think this comes up for so many people in business a lot. I think when we have a big goal in business, or when we have any goal in business, or when we're hitting an upper limit and when we're not getting results right away, it is so easy for all of us to make ourselves wrong, to think things aren't working, to think that we should choose something else, or to change the goal. I've seen this for clients a lot. Like if a launch doesn't go the way they want the first time, it's almost like they want to change, then maybe they shouldn't launch, or they should change the business, or they should have a different offer, or they should like want to make a different amount of money, as opposed to seeing, wait a second, that means you went through the first journey of this. That just means we've got more work to do in like a really positive way. There's just more opportunities. There's just more learning growth for us to go through, whether that's practically with a strategy. But this means you're already on the way to it. And I think the ability as business owners for us to hold a vision, for us to hold a goal around what we, not just monetarily, but like what we want for our work and our business. I actually do love money and love making money and like watching my money grow and like playing with it. I have quite a nice relationship with money. But for me, if this is helpful to hear, honestly, in my business, it's like always been about the money, but it's like never been about the money. I wanted to make $60,000 a year when I started my business. It's not like I had these, I have big goals, but for me, it's always been so much more about the coaching work and the mastery and the clients I get to serve. And I know that's not sexy for marketing, but like that's just the truth of it all. I say this all the time. I would do this for free, except for I wouldn't if I won the lottery, except for I wouldn't, because I know when people invest, it's such a bigger deal. But for me, it's so much about I've fallen in love with the growth journey, but I've fallen in love with I'm such a mastery oriented person with the craft of coaching and what that means and witnessing people. So like to me, it's so much more about that, but the money does help represent that, especially with a revenue share model. But being able to, let me go back to what I was saying here, though I do think that's part of it. I do think the more you can both hold a monetary goal and want it, but also detach from that meaning anything about you or needing to hit it, I do think it makes it easier to stay in the game until you do. But being able to hold that vision for your business and a goal for a long term and a long time, especially when you don't hit it the first time around, I think is such a required skill set for longevity in business and for scaling your business that we just don't talk about enough. I was talking about this with my stepson this week, and he's like super into tennis. He's at tennis, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 days a week. He's always in tennis tournaments. But we were talking about he's had the same goal in tennis now. He's 14 for, I want to say 5, for a long time already. And he will continue. But we were talking about how him holding fast to the same goal. He wants to play, I think it's D1 tennis in college, and that requires certain abilities. But he's having to hold on to that goal for so long and through so many challenges and through so many like ups and downs and through like not being there. Like it's not even like 1 or 2 years, but in multiple years. I think especially for a teenager, it's a particularly challenging thing to hold. And we were just talking about what a big deal that was. And if you've been following my work at all, you know I'm obsessed with the term grit, which is essentially the passion and perseverance for a long-term goal. But that is really what goes into success. They've done studies around this, and I think so often we think it's the people who just come out the gate and like get the result right away. But I really see it as it is having that grit. But anyway, going back to this here, I think being able to hold on to that for yourself and continuing to show up for the work is such a big deal. What I also saw for myself in this, and I think there's a couple things here. I don't know how much we've talked about this, but I'm curious how many of you all believe this. Let me just see if I have questions, because I'm like on a ramble here. Alyssa says, excited to see into your mindset work. Thank you, lady. Let me know if you have any questions as well. I'm curious to hear y'all thoughts on this, but something I've really seen to be true as I pay attention for this through myself and through other clients is all of us have big goals. Well, let me frame this a different way. All of us have the potential to reach any big goal we put our mind to. Like I firmly believe that if you have a goal in your mind, you're not just grasping it randomly. With grit, right, with time and perseverance and holding towards that and like mastery, like you can achieve that. And our path to those big goals for all of us comes with a set of obstacles, so to say. And we all have personal growth opportunities, sometimes challenges isn't fun, so let's call them growth opportunities, which I know sometimes is like the most annoying fucking thing to hear, but we all have our stuff, right? And so the bigger the goal, generally, the more of our kind of personal challenges, business challenges, whatever those challenges are that we kind of have to overcome to reach that goal. I think that all like tracks. Something I've really seen to be true for everyone, and I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this one, is most of us have a couple of core growth opportunities, learning lessons, things we need to work through to be able to get the things we say we want, not just the things we want subconsciously, right? That we kind of, it's like what we came to this earth to have to like learn and overcome and grow through. And what I have seen is life, the universe, God, your business, whatever it is you believe in, will keep presenting you with the same lessons, with the same challenges, with the same growth opportunities over and over and over and over again in different ways until you actually decide to learn and master them. And I think we can see this for any of you who've ever dated. I know when I became single, it was something I was like, oh, really interesting. I keep dating the same person in a different format. Like I'm the common denominator. And there was, before I met my husband, there was some work, like healing I fundamentally needed to do. And I was going to keep getting that lesson in my dating experiences over and over again from different people, thinking that if I just like dated someone different, it would be different. But the truth was I was going to keep getting that same lesson showing up to me in a different way until I did that healing, until I kind of did that growth work. And once I did, it never showed up for me again. This is helpful to hear. This is way TMI, but maybe this is helpful to hear. For me, I've got all sorts of trauma past stuff. I had a quite interesting past experience with an addict and all sorts of things there. So when I became single, my pattern was saying I wanted to be in a relationship, but attracting only unavailable, like highly unavailable, wonderful, but highly unavailable people. And it wasn't until I realized that was a pattern and that was something in me that I really needed to heal and grow, right? That I like literally the next person I dated was my husband, and he's like the most emotionally available person in the world. Like you can't make that shit up. And so to date, I've never had experienced that again. But this is what I mean here. I find we just keep getting the same lessons over and over again. And so here, when I look at like what I'm actually celebrating and when I look at that, you know, having my biggest cash month in business, yes, of course, there are like strategic things in my business I've been working, but the honest truth is I've been working the same strategy for 6 years. If anything, I'm doing less in my business than ever before. Yes, we implemented and I created an ads funnel last year, and that is performing tremendously for us. Oh my gosh, tremendously is not the word I want to use. It makes me sound like he who shall remain nameless. Is performing very well for us. And yes, I have a fully booked business, and yes, revenue share is a big factor to this. But I think something that's interesting is I would have expected for my biggest cash month ever, for it to be the month where I like had the most sales, where I had a launch, maybe where I created a new offer, where I maybe spent a lot more on ads, where I made a bunch more sales. And I did make some sales. I did bring in some new clients, but most of them were for future, and a couple of new spots fill in, and then most of them were for future spots. The majority of the revenue I made was from existing clients, was from renewal clients, existing clients, and revenue share. So it wasn't really from even stuff I was doing so differently, which I think is just, again, interesting to see. But what I was doing, and everyone's business model is different. So for some of you, your pop months and your big months will come from a launch. And I think that's also like important to speak to. That kind of goes back to the strategy side. But what's so interesting to see is, again, it came back to I was being different and I was allowing for something different, and that congruence in terms of what felt safe and okay to receive felt really different. But that is because fundamentally, I think for the last 3 years, I've had the same lessons show up for me over and over again. And I just finally started to actually see them and lean into them and lean into the work. Not to say I was never doing the mindset work, but just to lean into some of the uncomfortable stuff. And so last month in particular, if I think about what I would have thought was like, I don't know, I think we think about like big cash months, and I think maybe this is just my perception, y'all let me know if this feels true or not, but I think sometimes the perception in the online space is like, that's when you're like super high vibe and like talking about money all the time and like super focused on the financial goal. And here's what's interesting when I look back to last month. I pretty much knew at the beginning of the month it was going to be my biggest cash month ever, even though I had projected revenue. I think I had projected revenue to maybe 38K, something like that. So I didn't actually know, but I kind of did know, and I kind of did. But I think part of that was like I just decided, but I also held it really lightly. I didn't think about it. I literally didn't think about it a whole lot. I just also have built that much trust, and this comes into some of the being part. I just built that much trust into, like I want to book an intensive or two. I can. Like I know how to, like I trust my strategy and I trust myself in my business that much. And so in that aspect, and I think the other part that is interesting to see, excuse me, something in my eye, is all of the stuff that I was kind of scared of kind of passing that upper limit. People hating me, having to overwork, people expecting stuff of me that I didn't owe them. I just got a lot, like all that stuff that came up. It pretty much all showed up for me last month. And I think it's shown up for me every probably month in my business for the last 3 years. I think it's just the last 6 months I've really been leaning into the work to shift it. I had a post go viral, y'all, it's past 500K now. I think we're at like 300 or 400 saves and I don't know, 1,000, I don't even know how many comments at this point. The amount of hate I got on that one post alone is mind-boggling to me. And we already did a live stream on this, but it was just such an interesting thing to see. I was like, oh, I'm literally being different around this. I used to be so scared to show up and to share my truth and to share things, and like did so much about like, how can I make sure that everybody will understand this and this won't hurt anybody's feelings and I won't make anyone feel bad and again, we already talked about this, so I won't go into it too much, but it was just so interesting to see. I was like, oh, I've just done so much work around this. I'm just actually quite unbothered by everybody's crazy shit, and I will just let that do whatever it's doing. I had quite a lot of stuff going on with team on the back end. I've had quite a lot of places in my personal life where I've had to hold some really strong boundaries, where in the past, I mean, I'm pretty good at boundaries, but in the past, especially around finances, this is where I would have flexed or leaned in, because I don't want to make people feel bad. I mean, one of my big things is I never want to make people feel bad about where they're at in their journey or with how much money they're making or anything like that in comparison. So I do a lot of, I'm getting much better at this. I wrote a post about this today, but I've historically just done a lot of downplaying and dimming my light and making, like, how can I make myself small so other people feel better? I think a lot of my high achievers are like this. I think a lot of you with different family upbringings, for lots of reasons, I think a lot of people do this. And so I've just done a lot of work around that. I've just seen that in my content, but I've also seen that in certain things that have bothered people in my personal life around what I share, and just really seeing how much work I've done around allowing that to be okay, that someone thinks that way or feels that way, without feeling the need to fix it or without feeling the need to make them feel better at the expense of myself. And I'm hoping this is making sense. And then boundaries. I would say boundaries are the other one, because one of my patterns for sure, and I see this in a lot of clients, and I think this all shows, like, I think a lot of what I'm describing here, even if you're not wired like me, I invite you to think about, like, sometimes then we're sort of like the pendulum swings, like the other side of it, but we all have our patterns, right? And one of my patterns is definitely the feeling to, let me think of how to describe this, the feeling that I need to, if I'm making more, that I need to prove it's okay, and that I've earned it so that people won't feel bad. It's kind of like this whole thing, like, I just don't want people to feel bad to hate me, essentially. And I never want to make, like, it's a whole bunch of stuff there, right? That's not really allowing for me to receive more, right? Like, that's not really me than owning my success or my work either. That's not really me backing myself. That's not, and not to make myself wrong, but like just to give like context into the mindset work, as Alyssa was saying, into the growth there. And the other side of that is then what that has historically done is when I create big results, I will create work for myself that isn't required. Like I will just create and find work as a way to basically self-soothe, and so that I can feel like it's okay that I'm making the money I've made, which is why 40K has always just been such a threshold for me as well, especially with a one-on-one model and revenue share, because I feel like, well, when I make more money, there's such a pattern to create extra work to essentially prove it's okay so that I can feel like I deserved and earned it. But that sort of like, I don't want to, oh no, did the live stream stop? No, okay, my computer just did a weird thing. I think I'm still here. But internally, I didn't want to burn out. And so I would like always hit that as well, because I'm like, well, if I make more than that, I'm going to have to do so much to prove to people it's okay that I'm making this. And so that's where the kind of the boundaries piece came in. And what I saw last month, I was like, oh, it was so interesting to see how I really didn't fall into that pattern. And it's interesting. I had a day or two where I accidentally my schedule got overbooked. And in the past, I would have seen that as like, oh, well, I can handle this. Let me just book more and more and more clients. I've talked about that before. And instead, I actually really am proud of how I like set boundaries around that, recalibrated, communicated with team to make sure that doesn't happen again, gave myself a day with no client sessions later in that week, and didn't feel like I needed to like hustle or work more, or that like that was the way to create my safety or to make sure I like hit this number. I was definitely in a place of like, I think we're going to, but if not, I don't care. I'm not trading in my own well-being and my own well-being, but also the way I want to hold myself to show up for clients presently, because I can't do that super well, or for my marriage, or for my working out, or anything if I'm burnt out, right? At the expense of, again, it's a big goal, but it's also only $1,134, like depending on how we look at it. Like that was not worth it to me. And so that was just another really big edge I saw for myself to work through, and how all of this, I'm hoping this is all making sense. Let me know if I'm landing the plane on this. But for me, what I saw is the work, and what this represents is, yes, it's breaking through that upper limit, but it was also creating so much safety in my nervous system and so much trust in myself to see that, yes, I could make and receive and hold more money, but that it was safe to do so. And that making more money didn't protect me from things like potentially getting overbooked. It didn't protect me from people getting mad at me. It didn't protect me from people wanting to cross my boundaries. It didn't protect me from people being upset hearing me talk about money. All of those things happened last night. It didn't protect me from team stuff, or like things being on my plate, but making less didn't protect me from that either. But the difference was seeing that, but the difference is the way I'm showing up and being to navigate and to hold all of those things, and they're not as big of a deal as I thought they would be. Like that was the big shift, and I think that's the kind of shift that however much money we make, I'm not like making a bad mindset. I'm just pretty sure this month won't be the same, just given kind of where I know clients are at and just the way the revenue share works and all of that. And for me, what's nice is like, this is almost like not about the money I made, and it is so much more about what no one can take away from me, what no one can take away from you when we're doing this kind of work, is I now feel so much more safe and solid in my business than I did 6 months ago. And it's not like I didn't feel safe and solid then, but like there's such a like an unstoppable feeling when you break through those upper limits, but also when you see how all of the stuff we're scared of, all of those things can happen, and we can't protect ourselves from those happening by making more or less, but we can navigate them. Like that, to me, that like way of being, that way of showing up, that way of like actually leaning in to do the real work. When I say the real work, yes, I like do my journaling and go to coaching and therapy, but the real work is like actually holding the boundary. It's actually having the hard conversation with the team member. It's actually not jumping in to try to fix someone's emotions when they're unhappy with your success, right? Like that's the real work. And I see like the more we can do that, the more safe and the more unstoppable we feel in business, the less it almost kind of matters how much we're making, the more that we open ourselves up to make more, and the less we have to learn the same lessons over and over again. So that was the last piece I wanted to put there. And so I'll be interested to see. I'm sure like business will keep businessing, but this was one of the things I was also celebrating with my coach. There were just a couple of things that showed up, and I literally in Basecamp, I was like, well, I just see this as like, this is just my opportunity to actually like nail this one. Like, this is not fun. This is not comfortable. I had one where I had like a couple throw up emojis in there, but I was like, like, I just see this as like, this is my work to do, to take the contrary action. We talk about that in coaching quite a bit, right? I have historically always responded to this one way. This is my opportunity to take the contrary action and to respond to this in a different way, to actually do the work to actually be different. And so I'm hoping I'm landing the plane here, but that's what I'm really celebrating, and that's what I want to reflect. I think we talk in like the mindset manifestation world about like, you have to be it before you have it. And I think that's what being it is. Yes, I could have gone into a car dealership or into a Louis Vuitton store to like be in the energy of money. And I'm sure that's a thing as well. But to me, this is actually being in the energy of money. It's, what are all those growth edges that we're avoiding? And what are all the ways we've historically shown up to play small? How can we actually show up to be different? How can we actually take a different action? Yes, how can we think differently? But sometimes we don't think differently until we act differently. So how can I actually set the hard boundary instead of just thinking I need to hold a boundary, or that like it's fucked up someone is asking this of me or wants this of me, right? How can I not jump in to fix someone's emotions or someone's misunderstanding of me, or not jump in to correct every person, though I did jump in to comment to a few of the unhinged people online because it's also political and I couldn't help myself. Like, how can I take the contrary action, like not take that on or feel like that means it's something true to me, right? That contrary action is actually what supports the mindset, and that is actually being different. And when we be different, that is what changes everything. And so that is what I'm actually celebrating. I'm always proud of how I've shown up in my business. I think I show up with integrity. I'm proud of my work. I'm proud of how I walk my talk. I'm proud of the work I've done, like both my coaching work, but also like my internal work. But this just feels like a physical representation, manifestation of so much of the internal work I've really been committed to. And so that's what I wanted to reflect here, because this is the kind of stuff too, and I hope this lands and makes sense, because I know it's a little, it's like a little less, it's a little more fuzzy than like, here's how I changed my messaging or changed my ads funnel, which, you know, we can also have those conversations. But I want to represent this because I think this is the stuff we don't always hear. And I do not have a single client who's getting big results who isn't committed to this. It's just, this is like, these are like the hard small shifts you don't see because they're happening behind closed door. And then you're like, I don't understand why they had this huge quantum leap. Or like the biggest cash month, maybe this isn't a huge quantum leap, but we don't understand what went into that. And it's so often, yes, sure, there's maybe showing up differently, but to show up differently, you have to be different. And to be different, this is the kind of stuff we're talking about. So yeah, I hope that makes sense there. Let me see. Did I have anything else I wanted to share with you? This is actually, I'm just looking at the time. Yeah, I think this is I had two more notes here that I'll share, just because what I said in the notes for this is I've kind of shared like what contributed, what didn't contribute to this, kind of like what I thought would have contributed to having, like, breaking through that income threshold, having a highest cash month. Like if you'd asked me years ago, and then what did. And I touched on this briefly, but I think there's a couple of pieces here that this is maybe a little bit more on the practical side aside from the being, but that is what I am celebrating. But I thought this might be helpful to hear as well. So I'm mindful of how I phrase this, because I do think sometimes having a launch, raising your rates, thinking about your goal a lot. Sometimes we do have to be in a bit of a sales hustle. Sometimes we, I don't know, have to have a big masterclass. Like sometimes we do have to do these things, and like that is what contributes to a pop month. So absolutely that is true. And I think it's really fascinating to me that I had basically none of that at all last month. And again, I think that's probably particularly for me, like kind of my growth edge and what I needed to learn through. I probably have clients who are so resistant to showing up big, or who are so resistant to launching, or who's so resistant to some of those things that usually it's the contrary action, right? Usually our growth edge, when we lean into it, is what gives us the result we want on the other side. But for me, since I do not have a problem showing up and I do not have a problem doing the things, I think it was just interesting to see that for all of the things I probably thought I needed to have happen to have a bigger month, basically none of those were the things that were contributing factors, and how much of the things I would have thought would have sabotaged those results were the very contributing factors, like what we were just talking about. And in fact, had I hustled harder last month, I think that actually would have pushed away, not, and that's very different from showing up for my clients, but hustled harder in terms of creating work I basically didn't need to create for myself, or not trusting my strategy, or fucking with things that are working. That's maybe a little bit of a side tangent, but that is has been one of my biggest lessons, I'd say, over the last year. I think I've had to learn. I think that is one I've had to learn over and over again in business. I think I've gotten better at it and I do it less, but generally speaking, strategy comes pretty easily for me. That's why I teach this. That's why I am a coach around this. And when my strategies are working, I cannot tell you, because of my pattern of like, but I need to work harder so that I can make it okay that I have the results I do. I cannot tell you how hard it is sometimes for me to sit on my hands and to not go mess with things. That is why one of my eyebrows is shorter than the other, because when I first started plucking my eyebrows at like age 12, I just couldn't leave good enough alone, and I overplucked one side. Let's be real, right? So it's the same here. And so that's been a really big learning. And I think we forget that sometimes, yes, sometimes we do have to show up to do the new thing. Sometimes we do have to launch. Sometimes we do have to have the new offer, raise the rates, all of that. And a lot of the time, if your business is well oiled, it's about, sure, the small refinements, but it's also about seeing where things are working and trusting them and not overworking them and not breaking something. Because especially if we have a upper limit where there's a part of us that doesn't actually want to make more than we say we do, but for whatever the reason is for you, you might have very different reasons than for my upper limit. We will find ways to sabotage, right? So that we still do well, but don't actually pass that. Having a strategy that's working and fucking with it is a form of self-sabotage. That is a way to keep yourself from crossing over your upper limit. For some people, it's worrying a lot. I have quite a few clients that come to mind who one of their favorite ways to upper limit is to worry, like as they start to have success, it's like to worry about. I mean, I think I can have a form of that too, like the bottom falling out. But so it's starting to notice that, because again, that shows up in the strategy. And for a lot of you, if you're at the place where you're scaling, a lot of times it isn't about like always needing to do more, new. It's about maybe refining and or trusting, like optimizing and or trusting that. And I will say, aside from who I was being, the other biggest factor for me contributing to this, and I mentioned this earlier, but just to kind of put the bow on that, the other contributing factor really was my clients. And what I mean, there's actually a piece here this is my last closing piece here. This is the part that I think I have done so much work around. I support my clients with this so much. I think for all of us who are coaches, therapists, OBMs, I was talking about this with someone on my team. What I find is some of the most challenging work. So yes, it came to my clients and like, yes, of course, the service and the delivery and my clients' results, because I have a revenue share model and I cannot control that, and client retention, right? All of that contributed practically to the financials. But the part you can't see, and the part I wanted to reflect here in terms of who I was being, I have done so much work around letting go of client results. So I think I've never, like with revenue share, like that's just something I've never been like grippy around. I like really like supportive of my clients and meeting them wherever they're at, and like it's not like I ever would coach a client around something just so that they can make me money. It's always about around what's best for them. Always, like that's just never been something I have a thing around. However, something I have had a thing around is if I'm getting paid more, believing that I need to like somehow then be a better coach because I'm getting paid more through revenue share, right? It's that whole like I need to earn it, prove it, like work harder. And so with revenue share and with kind of breaking that upper limit, I had such a thing there, right? Where it's like, not that I want to like control client results. It's not so much that, but more sort of like this thing of like, well, if I'm going to make more, like I need to almost like be doing more to get my client results. And I think that is something, I would say probably for the last couple of years, I think I've done such work around that. And I think my clients could reflect to this. I think this is something I coach them around quite a bit as well, because I just see how impactful it is to, let me see if I can explain this here, but to see the more that I can trust that showing up to do my work is enough, and that I am a great coach. But part of being a great coach isn't trying to jump in to do something for someone else. It isn't trying to remove someone's discomfort. It isn't trying to fix someone or to get them results. It's to coach them and to sit with them in their discomfort, or to sit with them when they're not getting the result they want, or to help them figure it out, or to help them come to their own answer, or to support them through it. The more, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this in a way so it doesn't come across the way I don't mean it. Well, I'll say it the way I probably shouldn't, and then hopefully this will land for y'all. Okay, good. There's no questions here. But the more I can care about my client, I've said this in other ways, but the more I can care about my clients and not carry them, the more I can care about the results without taking them on as my own. And in some ways, like not care about the results, and that I care about them. Like I care about my clients so deeply. I love them, and I care so much they get results. But the less I can take them on and care about them, the better I can show up to be the coach who can support them to do their best and to meet them where they're at and to meet them through whatever their learning growth curve is, right? I just talked about like my coach had to hold me in 3 years and my stuff. It wasn't her job to like go through the learning curves for me to help me have this breakthrough. It was her job to keep reflecting back to me my bullshit, right? And to keep helping me see that and to keep helping me see those opportunities for growth and like, and I wouldn't call it bullshit, but just like to keep helping me see like those patterns in myself. And so the more I can see that, my job is the same for my clients. It's not to actually like jump in and to do it for them. The easier everything is and the easier I'm able to show up to be that coach and to allow myself to receive that revenue, but also the more my clients can grow and scale. And ironically, like the more my clients renew, because that's actually coaching and better coaching. And so anyway, I think that in terms of like, yes, of course, showing up to serve my clients, of course, showing up for the container, of course, delivery, of course, the results they're getting in terms of revenue share, of course, the client renewals, all of that goes practically into the financial aspect. But that part here, kind of in terms of this whole celebration, who I'm being, that's just, again, just really transparently so much of the work I've done that I do with clients that I see make such an exponential difference. Okay, y'all. I think that's all the main things. Also, we've been talking for a while here, so I'm sure there's other stuff, but let me know if you have any questions around this. Let me know if you have any reflections. I'm happy as well if you want to hear more of like a practical strategy live stream in terms of some of the like breakdown of that. But I thought hearing this side of things and what I literally am celebrating behind closed doors and like what that work is might be helpful, might be normalizing, might be insightful. And just for all of you, I just want to remind everybody here to kind of close this up in summary. We all have upper limits. Like that, everyone's upper limit is different, but everybody has those. I think it's just such a beautiful opportunity for all of us when we see those to not then see it as a limit, but just to see it as our current threshold, right? Like it is just our current barometer for what feels safe, okay, normal. It's our current comfort zone, for lack of a better way to say it. And I just see business as such a beautiful journey where we just get to continue stretching it, and not in a way of like, because we need to stretch outside that to be good enough, or we need to stretch outside that to be safe, or we need to stretch outside that to prove something to anybody else. Or like, I promise y'all, even if this feels annoying to hear because you're not making a ton of money right now, you will make a certain amount of money. Making more than that at a certain point doesn't change a lot. But what does change your day-to-day and your quality of life is when you do the work that allows you to break that upper limit, to step out that comfort zone and to normalize outside that upper limit, because you're changing who you're being, right? You're working through those learning curves. You're working through your edges. You're working through your own personal internal limitations, your own personal thermostat. That does change your day-to-day. And so while $1,134 after I pay taxes and all of the things, like that is not going to change my life, right? I'm so grateful for it, so I'm not discounting it at all. But like that is wonderful, and it's great to be able to talk about. Like it's fun to say like this is my biggest cash month ever. But the thing that is changing my life is fundamentally who I have become in the process. One of my favorite journaling questions for celebrating. I shared a guide around that, y'all. If you want it, just DM me or comment below and I'll send it to you. This is from like years ago. But one of my favorite journaling questions when I celebrate is, so what am I celebrating? What did I do to create this win? Who have I become, or who have I become more of in the process? And that fundamentally changes my day-to-day life. That fundamentally changes everything. It changes how I feel in my business. It changes how I feel making the money. It changes how I feel receiving more money. It changes how I feel spending money. It changes how I feel serving clients. It changes how I feel with my husband. It changes how I feel showing up at the gym. Like it fundamentally changes everything because I have fundamentally shifted and changed things inside of me. And that is something no one can take away from you or me. When we do that work, no one can fucking take that away from us. And what's also beautiful is when we do that work and we keep stretching those limits, right? We now that we have to prove something to ourselves, we prove and show to ourselves how much we're capable of and that we know how to get results. And that's also, I wrote an email about this not too long ago. Like when you learn how to make money and when you learn how to show up and be in a different way, all your money could go away, your results can go away. Like next month could be lower or higher, whatever that is. But when you fundamentally have that, no one can take those shifts away. You can go out and replicate those results. That to me is, I think, like one of the biggest gifts you can give yourself. So I hope, if nothing else, that's what you take away from this. I hope this was helpful to hear. Again, questions, reflections, leave them for me. That's what I'm celebrating over here. I, in many ways, feel like my business has not changed in 9 years. I'm doing the same thing I've always been doing. In other ways, I feel like I'm such a different person on the inside, in like the best way possible. I've always loved myself and how I've shown up, and I'm just so proud of myself and the work I've done, and I'm so proud of my clients for the work they do, and I'm so proud of for all of you because I know you're all showing up to do that work as well. So I hope that's helpful. And again, if any of you are curious about working together, if you're hearing this and you're like, oh, that's the kind of support I could use, but also I could use support with the practical strategy in terms of outlining my offers and my pricing and getting clear on that sales funnel and sales process, whether it's organic or ads or figuring out how to message yourself. I'm excellent on the strategy side. I've just also got you on the internal side, because it's when we have the two of those together, not only do your results blow up and you have record-breaking income months, but things feel more sustainable in business and you feel a whole lot better at running your business. That's the type of work I do. That's the type of client I'm looking for. I did have someone who had to drop out of a spot in May, so I have a ongoing partnership spot opening up, and then I'm opening up an intensive this month. Maybe I could be persuaded for an ongoing spot earlier for the right client, so I'll drop a coaching consultation link below for that. I love you all so much. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you next week. Bye.